And so there was no one concentric way of understanding that was the truth. They really believed that everyone found their own true way to their divinity. Yeah. And it was in that journey that you would find your way.
So today I have Nathalie Jackson here with me on the Living Magick Occult-cast. And yeah, episode number 4, we're going to talk about all sorts of things like shadow work and magic and maybe perhaps Golden Dawn tarot talismans or whatever other things want to come through. And yeah, just really honored to have you here, Nathalie, because I feel like since I've met you, like I think I maybe shared with you how you came into my life, but like it was all literally me looking for some type of mind expansive experience, primarily using substances. And someone was like, why don't you like reach out to Nathalie about some of the things that she's about to start? And as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, it's not about any substance. It's about like diving deeper into whatever the mysteries are. So welcome.
Thank you.
And yeah, like if you're okay to like start us off with just what like brings you like the joy and magic in your life, or living that magic, however you identify that.
Sure, thanks. Well, I'm really grateful to be here. I know we've gone on quite the journey together, and it's an honor to have been invited, so thank you. So for me, like magic is about transforming the mundane and bringing in some qualities of goodness and joy and ecstasy and bliss, and actually learning the process of cultivating that within the self. So for me, I've gone through all of these experiences of motherhood and, raising 3 boys, and a lot of it can be mundane. We can get into this like rut of existence. And that's really when I started exploring, there's got to be more to this existence than the repetition day after day of the routine, right? Yeah. The routine got a little dull after a while. And so I wanted to bring some sparkle into the routine. And so I started exploring, like, how can I cultivate that sparkle from within? And then really I think I've known from a really young age about there being something greater to existence than my experience. Like this whole existentialism was known to me. I probably lived it in other lifetimes. And I started exploring things like the Neil Donald Walsh books, The Conversations with God, right? That was kind of my beginning of exploring. There's got to be more to our relationship with the divine than what I was taught from my Catholic upbringing.
Okay. Yeah. So the Catholic upbringing, and I think in like your past life, if I could say in this lifetime, you were an engineer, right?
I was.
So kind of like, again, that masculine energy sort of showing up. Like, how did that play a role then into you becoming now who you are?
Yeah, that's a really great question. What I was sharing with you before we started was I was very in my masculine for the probably the first 25 years of my life, just having an experience of being a woman and operating in the world like in my masculine energy, outward focused, driven, one of the boys. I did all the things with even in engineering school, I played on a basketball team with men. So I was very much in my masculine space. And it wasn't until, or my masculine energy, it wasn't until I gave birth to 3 boys, then there was a disturbance in the field. There was like an imbalance of masculine, feminine energy in our household. So 4 men and me. And I knew at that point, like I knew on some deep cellular level that I couldn't exist in my masculine anymore in order for there to be harmony within our home environment.
Yeah. Okay.
So started exploring the feminine energies, and with like red tents, and really exploring what it meant to be a woman in this body.
And almost like ancestral, or like like when I hear that, the red tent, or some of these like rites of the woman that come from like indigenous cultures, or people that have come before, people that are still tapped into the ancient times.
Yeah.
And so with like your program, it's Woman Unveiled, right? Like the priesthood path or the priestess path, is that the way we could identify it? Like, how would you say that like mystery piece is sort of, yeah, like how did you come into that actually? That's what I want to know first. Maybe people are interested because as we all know, when the teacher or when the student's ready, the teacher appears, right?
So that's exactly what happened. So I had removed myself or moved away from engineering when my oldest son was born. He was born with a brain injury. And so he experienced all similar characteristics of someone with a brain injury, like a lot of emotional, a lot of anger, a lot of rage from birth, from infancy. And I knew at that point, like I had no control or no power over changing his experience. Like engineering school didn't give me those skills. To be able to know what to do in this super difficult mothering situation, right? So I started exploring the healing arts then, and I slowly removed myself from engineering. And then I opened a healing center. So here's where the story got really interesting. So I was just sitting one night, the healing center, the door was unlocked, but we were closed. And this woman walks in, and she sits down, and she starts talking about she's going to go so rewind a little bit. The night before, I had had a dream, and in my dream, my dreamer self said, "You're going to follow the path of the priestess." And I had no idea what a priestess was at that point. I was in my 20s, never heard of the word before. And this woman walks into my healing center, sits down, and she starts talking about this experience she's thinking about taking and going and doing this work in Massachusetts with just this woman and She talks for like an hour. And then she tells me the name of the program, and it was called Priestess Path.
Yeah, okay.
And I was like, okay. So at that point, I was really listening. Yeah. It started the week after. It went on for 9 months. I had enough air miles to do 9 trips to Boston in order to do this. Like it was just one synchronicity after another after another. So I knew I was meant to go on that path.
Yeah, well, yeah, it sounds like the universe is like, you have no choice.
I have no choice. Like here you go, do it. Okay. And I knew after the first weekend that was the work on a deep feminine level. That was the work that I was born to do. Like why I was sent here and given all of these masculine experiences so that I could remember the feminine inside of me, and it was the opening to that, a beautiful opening.
Yeah, totally. Well, and that's how I would describe it, having gone through that, like for the past couple of years, and also being one that's sort of come from the very masculine way of being, you know, like having to feeling the need to have to do everything and like take control or action in the situation, and just, yeah, kind of like what I would identify, I'm not sure if this is like the correct termage necessarily, like a toxic masculine way of being within myself, like, I think everyone has the tendency to show both the toxic kind of behavior or the unhealthy, maybe, and maybe we could just identify that as shadow, the shadow aspects of said emotion or way of being.
Absolutely. And I believe we all have that, the shadow aspect of that feminine or more inward, introspective, calling all your energies back in, versus the healthy version of that, which would be in right relationship to that energy, right? And same with the masculine. I think we all have both an unhealthy shadow version and a healthy version inside of us. Just most of us are shown the unhealthy version as we're operating in our society. There's a lot of that.
Yeah, I think from the repression and stuff that occurs just so easily. So like, I don't want to speak anything that maybe is supposed to remain kind of veiled around that, like what you offer and what that priestess path looks like. But do you mind just sharing with folks about that, especially when it comes to like ceremony and how that's been so potent in creating that sort of like inner transformation and thus like an external outward transformation?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a 9-month-long journey that women go on, and they go on with the same group of women. So it's not something where, there's strangers that are coming in. It's like you go through the full transformative process of learning one another and what it means to be in a collective, in a sisterhood with each other. So there's a lot of ceremonies and opportunities to really challenge, core wounding around sisterhood wounds, around our mother wounds, around ancestral patterns and wounds that we might be carrying, generationally. And the kinds of ceremonies we do are, unlike, there's a lot of mystery schools out there. Like it is, it's very common there's a lot of them online that you can join and learn all these ancient teachings. And it's all, for the most part, really amazing information that's out there. But unlike those, this particular path is about the experience. So it's about, intense being together, like sleeping in the same space, sharing the same food, sleeping out in the forest together, walking over hot coals, like having these experiences together with the intention of whatever is repressed or held in shadow, actually being given an opportunity to come to the light. So it's like exposure therapy, one might say, right? The more you can have of an intense collective journey together, the more opportunities you have to see what's repressed and what's under the surface.
Oh, totally. I'd say like the difference between individual one-on-one work or group work, if we can call it that, like it's just so, even if you don't do anything or take part actively within a group, it's like you're going to get something mirrored, shown to you through other people's conflicts or whatever, that's showing up. And to me, that's just like so potent.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes overwhelming.
Sometimes overwhelming, and sometimes it's easy to go, "Wow, this is just too much." So I'm going to walk away from it. And I found the women who really say yes to it and accept those mirrors as they come. We have mirrors all the time in our family of origin. There's plenty of mirrors, right? In our working scenarios, all kinds of mirrors. So this is a specific kind of container that's designed to reflect those mirrors for one another.
Yeah, okay. And that's where it's like, I didn't really realize like the stories, the myths that exist prior to entering in that like are those archetypes, are those sort of like keys to understand the self. And so do you mind sharing a bit about that, like in your understanding, your experience, like why is it that works? Like, what is that about?
Yeah, well, there's a wheel that I've developed for this particular body of work. So the 12 archetypes of a powerful woman. There are numerous archetypes that we all carry as humans on this planet. And by archetypes, I mean like universal forces that are available to us as a human and specific to humanity's journey that kind of transcend through eras, through time. And so we see similar archetypes showing up in mythological stories from the beginning of written history or even spoken storytelling, right? Like one really common archetype we hear about is the hero, the hero's journey, right? Someone goes off onto a journey to learn something about himself, encounters all kinds of obstacles, faces his darkness, her darkness, and then learns something, transcends who he was before, and comes back to the village having the death of one archetype or identity for the birth of a new identity. And so each one of these archetypal forces have a different kind of mythological power available to us. For example, I'm just going to speak, the one that's showing up in my space right now is the archetype of the mother. Not the experience of mothering, but the archetype of mother is about learning how to nurture the self. Like so often in our experience as women, we're taught that it's right and good and you'll be a good mother or a good human if you can nurture others, if you can be in service, if you can sacrifice to others, do all these things to help and support others. The archetypal force of the mother teaches us how to do that for ourselves. So how to nurture our heart and our little ones on the inside, how to give to ourselves in really deep, nourishing ways. Self-care, like soul care is more what that archetype is.
I like that.
about.
I like that term, soul care. Because it's not just about like the physical body or like what, it's about something more like that nourishing.
Yeah, so that's one of the archetypes, and they're not all feminine in nature. Some can definitely apply to all genders for sure. And the wheel itself takes a woman through many aspects of what it means to be empowered, to walk it, with your voice intact, with your power reclaimed, with your heart soft and open and vulnerable and being willing to be seen in that vulnerability.
Yeah.
Right? It takes us through all of those experiences.
Yeah, yeah. And it, like you said, it's not necessarily easy. And I would say in my experience, even when those like edges were being kind of pushed up against, and I was like, I'd rather just do my regular avoidance.
Yeah.
I don't need anybody. I don't need anything. Let me just keep to myself over here. Like exactly that, like continuing to open up and just like listen almost, I would say, to what like I need, but also what's being just spoken. And this sort of like neutrality comes in. Like it's been really beneficial, like to show my own growth as like an individual and as a woman. And like the shifting, I guess, that's happened with doing that type of healing work, but also being able to like support other people in that, which I think is like a huge part towards the like second year, right? Is this like, now how do you step into that again, embodying it? You've done this sort of like healing and face these pieces, but now moving into the world, which you have done, like, and I guess that's why we are where we are, even like however many thousands of years later, generation after generation of women doing this work and connecting to that, teaching, and then sharing it
And passing it on.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a piece I was just talking about with one of my sisters the other day about this concept of manifestation. And what exactly is manifestation? Like if you really understand yourself as a creator of your own paradigm, of your own reality around you, what are the skills that we need to learn in order to change that reality? Those are really learned skills. You know, it isn't only like setting an intention and then sitting and meditating in that intention and hoping that it's going to come true, or even believing that it's going to come true. Like it requires action and it requires commitment, dedication, accountability. And these are all learned skills that very few people are taught in a school environment. You know, they should be taught in a school environment, and they're not.
No, unfortunately not. I guess hopefully then people can come to it at some point in their life. Yeah,
when they're ready, I suppose.
Well, and I'm even thinking of like that number 4 you mentioned before, like 4 being chesed on the tree of life, and like that being kind of the, you know, from 1, 2, 3, those are kind of non-formed sort of, then Binah makes it formed, and then it comes into materialization. Like that to me is the manifestation aspect, like actually drawing something into that physical place after the learning, after the embodiment and understanding, and then it can be like, manifest.
And there's something about that chesed, funny that you bring that into this talk right now, because that energy is very much outward, like the planet Jupiter, right? Like it's like outward giving, compassion, offering, like abundance, like it's all of this outward energy that's unlimited. Like you have this capacity to just create whatever it is you want to create. Now, obviously you need the discernment of the other side of the tree, right? Of Geburah. And just to be in that initial stage of like manifestation and outward expression, even that, there's some skills required in order to learn how to do that.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just still learning all that.
Oh, I am too.
You're like the second or third person to say that about, you can't just meditate and like let it happen. So it's like, oh yeah, I forget, like there's actual action, which might be then that masculine, like, that beauty of the balance of both.
Exactly.
Okay, so so of course we're talking about like path working, tree of life, Kabbalah stuff. I'm like, how does that sort of tie in, or what's your interest within that, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah,
I like talking about that.
Absolutely, I love talking, and I know you love talking about that too. So it's hard for me to really describe the moment that I started being interested in that kind of esoteric knowledge. I think it was in me, and so it just started kind of like finding its way to me. Like I started really young, in my teens, being interested in the tarot and astrology, and like, oh wow, how fascinating these systems. Of course, that wasn't taught in Roman Catholic school at all, right? But they just kept dropping into my awareness. And not until my 20s did I start actually seeing there was entire bodies of knowledge where all of that came from. Like a bigger body that harnessed all of that. Those were just little like droplets of knowledge in the bigger body of wisdom that was available. So then, of course, I was like, well, tell me about that bigger body of wisdom. Like, I need to know that. So on a deep cellular, probably ancestral level, I knew there was so much more to that esoteric wisdom than what was just available in these singular systems that were being taught and offered so easily and readily. And so I started looking into the Kabbalah, and in my 20s found a teacher who spoke Hebrew, and she knew she was reincarnated from someone who actually was part of the original writers of the Zohar, one of the original texts of the Kabbalah. And so the information was so easy for her to understand. And that's where my journey began, and I haven't looked back. Like, I've absorbed everything like a sponge, just taking it all in, because it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And then part of my sacred path has been to like it's almost like there's so much complex wisdom available, and there are some wisdom keepers who just understand it, can translate it and offer it back. And I truly believe that's one of the gifts I came into this lifetime with, is simple translation of complex systems.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's meant for everyone though? Like, or is it like, what's that?
I don't think so. I don't even think there's an interest for the majority of people to find the meaning of life and existence and why creation came. I think the majority of people don't. They have an explanation that was given to them, and that's enough. That's good. That's good. It works. And it was never enough for me. I was like, oh, there's got to be more. There needs to be more. You know, I was just having this conversation with my son this morning, because he's a philosopher. He's into philosophy. And so I was talking about how the Kabbalah wasn't just one philosophy. It was actually a debate of philosophers who came together and were like, this is my path to my divinity, and this is my path to divinity. Well, let's talk about what's different about those paths and debate and so there was no one concentric way of understanding that was the truth. They really believed that everyone found their own true way to their divinity, and it was in that journey that you would find your way.
Okay. Yeah, to me that feels like I want to say the right way, like for anything, philosophy, magic, you know, even our political state now, if I can call it a political state, it's like just people coming together, sharing what they feel is like their truth, and being open to like being receptive to other ways, and maybe that will contribute in some capacity. Maybe. And I guess that's kind of where you like tie in a lot of like clean talk and like this sort of like clean communication and the shadow work. Because like, to me, that's all the same. It's like embracing everything that exists along that polarity or spectrum of existence.
Yeah, and I think there's a real place for that, right? I think it's necessary right now, if we're to heal the division that's taking place, is to just relearn how to be together with opposing views. And wow, what a concept, right? It seems like such a, like, oh, of course, it's so simple. And it's so complex when our opposing views are like directly interfering with each other's identities, right? Then it gets really complex. How can I still be in relationship with you and seek to understand from a place of curiosity without canceling you or removing you or blocking you from my existence? Oh, it's big. It's really big. This is where shadow work really plays a part, I believe. So for those who don't know what shadow work is, it in itself is a whole organization that's based on Carl Jung's teachings around the shadow. So that there's that each human who's existing right now has a whole series of repressed or denied aspects or hidden aspects of self that were tucked away because they weren't deemed appropriate to be loved and accepted within your family of origin. So we have all these little bits that are just tucked
under
away
the carpet there,
under the carpet there. I'm not going to show anybody that part. Definitely not. Definitely don't want to show anybody, the jealousy or the resentment or the hatred, or maybe I don't want to show people my light and my gifts and my like capacity, my bigness, my greatness. Like maybe that's been tucked away into shadow. So this organization known as Shadow Work was created back in, about 30 years ago now, in order to create processes, really specific processes that help us remove that carpet, see what's underneath it, bring those shadows to the light, and then reintegrate them in a way that accepts all of who we are, not just the parts that we think are acceptable, but all of who we are.
Yeah, because it is, that's like the wholeness is that like embodiment. And having done both like the group shadow work processes with you that like vary from like an individual level, but also everyone just like tapping into their power, and then the one-on-one work where we like the coaching, where we explore those different parts. I would say that's been like very transformative. Even when I don't like necessarily, I think the last time or the time before that I came to see you, I didn't really know why I was there. I'm like, I just feel like I'm supposed to be here. And the things that came up, like, oh, okay. And that's, I guess, the thing about the shadow. And it's, what does he say? I think Carl Jung, like, bringing the things that are unconscious into the conscious awareness, right? Yeah, it's like we don't even know.
We don't even know. For the most part, right? Like some things we purposely keep hidden. Like we don't want anybody to know that part of me, right? And then there's this whole other category of things we don't even know that's hidden in our psyche, but still operating. It still comes out sideways and unconsciously, and like, this anger will start to spew out of me, or this sadness will just start to pour out of me, and I don't know where it's from. Those are some indication of what's repressed in the psyche, and in the body, like on a cellular tissue level, is where we hold these emotions.
Yeah. So like how, if you were to share with someone, how would they know like, oh, this is a shadow part that might be here? You mentioned like some of the emotions of like anger, sadness, or whatever it might be, but are there other things people could be kind of aware of, or if that's showing up for them, like, okay, maybe it's time to do some shadow work?
Well, I would definitely say whatever most aggravates you or irritates you or frustrates you or activates you in somebody else.
Okay.
Right? So the mirrors, right? Looking to, when we get really, really activated or triggered, we use that word a lot nowadays. When we get really triggered by something that's someone else did, chances are pretty high there's something repressed on the inside. There's some repressed emotion from an early, probably childhood wound that just got touched. It's like that button got pressed, and now all of a sudden, whoa, there it is. And I'm going to make it all about them, but in reality, it's all about me, and something's moving in my space. So that's a good indication, right?
The button's been pushed,
The button's been pushed.
Well, I was just thinking about that this morning, kind of like, in a way, like karma or cause and effect. I find it so fascinating. There is nothing that exists. And this is my idea right now. Like nothing exists that I have either not done if I'm witnessing it in my reality. Like the same behaviors that someone's showing up currently in, or the emotions, I can put myself in their shoes, because like, oh my God, like I have just done that, or I have done it, and like that needs to, maybe there's a part of me that wants to change that, or at least see it in a new light. Because like you're saying, it's not that it's bad, it's just there's something about it that I think can be brought into, that's like the alchemy of the transmutation, like letting it just, the shit into gold.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And that takes a high level of awareness to start to actually look at something that we despise, or that we hate, or that we like morally we think is absolutely wrong, and find the mirror within the self. That to me is alchemy. That to me is true. Like if we can find the mirror and transform that within the self, then we're doing deep level of magic.
Yeah.
On a healing level, like on a spiritual healing level. But most people don't want to even consider that thing that they think is morally wrong, they've done some version of it on the inside, whether to ourselves, which is often how it goes, right? Like I'll attack myself, I'll condemn, perpetrate on myself, right? I might not do it to others, but I do it to myself. So even being able to have that awareness is I believe is a deep level of spiritual of growth,
Yeah, it's not easy. Like,
And not easy.
oftentimes, so grateful for Paul to like remind me, hey, you're doing this thing, right? It's like, oh, and I'll get upset and then come back to it. I think it's okay to have compassion and patience, to reach out to someone that you trust that does the work or can like support with like processing it. Because otherwise, I'd say like the shadow stuff has definitely been the darker, some of the most difficult stuff I've done, yet also the most rewarding.
Yeah.
Because it really like just once it's there, it's like, oh, okay. But I'm sure you would say like it's not like it goes away, like, like it's just different different bosses, different levels, different bosses or something.
That's right. And it never goes away. Those shadow parts never go away. But when they're no longer in shadow, then they're not operating in ways that like spiral or take us out or make us numb out or shut down, or all those coping mechanisms all come from repressed emotion in the body.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is where the empowerment comes in, by doing the shadow work and healing and transforming, alchemizing these energies within the self, is that we don't need those coping mechanisms anymore. Then we can operate in the world in a way that's neutral and stable and grounded and expanded and blissful and ecstatic about being alive. And I don't have to go to those places that I used to have to go to in order to shut it down.
Yeah,
that's the difference.
And I'm like seeing as you're talking in my head this image of how the planets are archetypes, and how the shadow work does touch on like archetypes and just the work that you do in general. So those two are very like, to me that is what magic is. If we call upon a particular planet or do a ritual at a particular time, it's because we're calling on that archetypal energy to support with bringing things to the light that might be in shadow, and also like stepping more along the path around that particular characteristic or way of being or experiencing life.
Absolutely. So to expand on that, so even just thinking of the Sephra Gabura on the tree of life, right? It's all about like severity and like cutting things away and removing toxicity from the body, transmuting anger, like all of that is. So if we bring in the energy of Saturn, right? Or Mars, actually, no, it would be more Mars. So bringing the energy of Mars into that space, right? We're like the warring, to help us to move anger through the body. Then the alchemy is, there's nothing wrong with anger, it's just energy, right? I'm moving this energy in a healthy way. Like I'm not going to damage other people in my life. I'm learning how to move it in a good way. And then I can learn something about boundaries and territory and a sense of self. Like all of that. So on a planetary level, on an alchemy level, and on a shadow level, we can do the work like all together. Like it all kind of fits together in one beautiful system.
Yeah, because it is like those things aren't bad. Like you need to have both. Like it has to be. Like, and there's no But I do want to ask you your thoughts, because I noticed even this morning I'm going through my YouTube feed and there's such this like polarity of information. Like the thumbnails on my feed are. I get posts that are like uber, like God, Christian, like God wants you to do this, like return back or something. And then on the other side is like devil, like Satan, like and like, I'm like, what is happening? Like, what do you think that is? And when you say that about the division happening in like the collective field, like I feel kind of like I'm sort of, shaded from some of the things that are happening, though I do know there's things happening because my parents often remind me of the challenges happening in the world. Like why that? And then like what are we supposed to, like, is there a choosing, or am I think we've talked about it before, that like neutral, the middle pillar path, like the between the both, like just what are your
Well, my thoughts on that is part of the evolution, that we're needing to experience the extreme polarity in order to find our way back to unity again. And it's from that, like how bad is it need to get? Again, I think of like an addict and the rock bottom. What is the rock bottom humanity has to get to apart from one another before we realize, wow, we can't go on as a civilization unless we actually come together again, that middle pillar. So right now it feels like we've swung to the extremes in order to, from my perspective, in order to find our way back to unity again. And now it's going to take a whole lot of work, because I have to be able to see that extreme in me and honor it and as a valuable part of myself in order to be able to come back to unity with those. So it's a lot of work ahead of us.
Yeah, like, and is this like, I know you can't tell the future necessarily, or maybe you can, but like, is this it? Like, is this like the tipping point? Or is there more? Like, and I say that because for myself, it's sort of like, well, it can't be anymore. Like, this has to be it. Like, how far? But maybe even the fact that I'm contemplating that means like,
that we're not at it yet. My perspective of that is the transformation has already begun.
Okay.
There are some that have already moved to that place of unity and have found a place of collective harmony, have come back together again. Even if we look post-COVID, right? There was such a separation, and there are many that have found their way back again to a place of unity and are continuing to move forward, even with differences of opinions, in a place of unity. So I actually believe that reality has already started forming. The one where we can coexist in unity, and difference of opinions is fine. We don't need to put ourselves into this echo chamber where it's only my voice I'm hearing because I'm surrounded by only people who believe the same thing I do. But I can actually be in a diverse environment of multiple every voice. Yeah. And we can find harmony in that space. I actually believe that's the new world that we're forming.
Yeah. Okay. And I can see then, like, and correct me if I'm like off about this, but the work with, say, someone diving into those 12 like archetypes of the powerful woman that you teach, by seeing those all almost like kind of like King Arthur and the Knight's Table, it's like that's all a representation of like one individual in the different parts that exist, different characteristics. That's right. By taking that and learning about the archetypes, then one's better able to enter into relationship in group or in that unity that you're like speaking of. Absolutely.
Because we learn not to operate from a guarded place anymore, how to express our boundaries, how to use our voice in really powerful ways, how to stand in our magnificence, in our greatness, and show up in that way. And I think that has a ripple effect that we can't even imagine. How that's impacting those around us, when we stand up as, or show up as all of who we are.
Yeah, and then not take it personally. I think that's a huge thing for me, is just now when I go into a group, any group, even if it's just like a meeting and there's, at least, even if there's 2, but usually 3, I start to notice those roles being played more. And before I would almost create a separation. Now it's like, oh, these are just ways in which people are showing up. And right. I've also learned that sometimes we ourselves can be, I think even especially people who are very like empathic or like more sensitive to the energy, they can kind of like take a role on, show up within a group in a particular way, because that's what's needed. That's right. For that healing or the mirror to be shown. And that's one thing I kind of struggle with, like, oh, can we just be done?
Like, with these roles. I did this really beautiful body of work called Deep Democracy. And in it talked about exactly that, about within a collective, every role is going to need to have a voice. Yeah. And usually it's certain people always come, like the devil's advocate, for example, right? Yeah. Usually it's always the same person who's showing up as the devil's advocate. I'm just going to like put a damper. I'm just going to show you all the possible pitfalls. But that role needs to be there. It has to be there. The interesting thing is, though, if that's a role that you often show up as, if you didn't show up as that, somebody else will. Yeah. Yeah. Like it'll be filled within the collective, because all of it makes up the whole. Yeah. So there's beauty in understanding that it isn't like you don't have to be that role all of the time, and sometimes it's really needed.
And I think, and then you can be in that role in like the light or in the shadow. Like, and I guess at that point too, it could be also sometimes it is needed in the shadow, because like that polarity needs to be seen or witnessed by people. Yeah. But that reminder of kind of like it's almost like we're doing a benefit.
It is.
Like,
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. It's powerful. So I do believe that shadow work is part of our collective healing. Like if we're going to become, really create that new reality together of unity, of coming together in harmony, of accepting each voice, then we need to do the work within ourselves of accepting all of the voices within the self, all aspects of who I am.
Yeah. Okay. Ooh. Okay. So besides the shadow work and the priestess path, like, what other sorts of practices would you say you've been either just like kind of getting into or been finding helpful? Like anything that you'd like to share with folks?
There's one practice that's really come through in the last couple years, and it has to do with sacred geometry. So I don't know how I think you're quite familiar with sacred geometry.
We've talked about it.
We've talked about it.
Please.
So this whole concept of like we do this work. For example, we'll use the tree of life as an example. So here is this 10 Sephra system, and there's these spheres and there's all this information, or like even planetary level, right? There's all this information astrologically, and we learn all this stuff. And the practice that's really shifting my physical vehicle is to actually embed those geometries onto the body and bring them into my astral plane. So it isn't this concept that's outside of me that's happening there, and all of creation came into existence because of it, and here's the explanation. It's actually I'm operating as that sacred geometry. Okay. So to activate it within the body has been really potent. Just seeing the orientation of the tree on the body, how it starts right above the head and ends at the bottom of the feet, and how it orients on the body. Seeing the orientation of like the Merkaba on the body, the star tetrahedron, and how that, how it orients and aligns on our body. All of that helps the body to awaken and catch up to the consciousness, from my experience. So I've been practicing that every day. Like it's a part of my daily routine of grounding, centering, moving through whatever is showing up in my world.
Okay. And like when I heard you say that, like you mentioned the Merkaba, and I know there's like the Merkaba activations and kind of connecting to that vehicle. And when you mentioned the tree of life, are you also envisioning like the different geometrical shapes of each sphere in those particular parts of your body? Or
absolutely. So like the top three spheres beyond the abyss, right? We have Keter, Chokmah, and Bina. So they exist right here on us. And there's this like the impact, the brain, they impact all of our senses are impacted by them. Our connection to source is impacted by them. And as soon as they're like envisioned and activated on our body, it opens up all of these realms and these awarenesses, and it's potent energy. I mean, it's energy that was held in mystery for thousands of years. And I do believe we're in a time now of rapid activation and ascension and movement forward. So now is the time for these mysteries to be activated within us, and for the awareness to be brought back into the collective. I believe that anyway.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I've been thinking about that lately, like even around mystery, people... I've seen people share this, like, or even with reading some of the occult texts, like the preface will say, there's mysteries hidden within the pages. Do you see the future, I guess, for humanity as those things won't be veiled, or will they always be veiled? Because that's just the essence of like even that tree.
I think like the expression for those who have eyes to see. I think when we start opening and searching is when the doorway opens. Even as I'm saying that, I can start to feel that in my body. Like there are mysteries that have not been revealed to me yet, even though I've studied it for 25 years. But I know that once I have eyes to see them and I'm curious, then that doorway will open to me. So it's not one of those things that we can just go, here you go, here they all are. And I don't think any one of us carry all of that or have that awareness already within us. And as we keep doing the work and keep looking and keep being curious about it, then a new doorway opens to us, and then we can see it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so it doesn't matter. And perhaps myself, sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, what if you share something that you're not supposed to share?
I don't think it matters.
It doesn't matter because, yeah, for myself too, I just came across something in like Crowley's book for never ever seen it before. Never, I was like, what? And it like was exactly like the answers that I was kind of looking for in the past week. I'm like, like, and to me, that is part of that like mystery. Like when it is time, like you're saying, when the student's ready, like then the information or the persons that can share that information will arrive. And it's a constant, like there's an infinite amount of knowledge and understanding, even to the point when we reach 100 years old.
Truly, and I don't even know that we can touch it all in one lifetime, other than maybe, I imagine like the pharaohs who knew how to like reincarnate with all of their wisdom. Like maybe if you did that 50, 60 times, you would remember all of the information. But in one lifetime, I don't think we can open all the doorways to all of the mysteries. And I trust that each doorway that we're meant to to experience will be opened to us in the right time. I do trust that process.
Is there like a doorway that you wish was available or open to you, or something that you've attempted to, but it hasn't like worked?
Yeah, it would be alchemy. It would be on a deep understanding of alchemy. I have a very surface, like just the tip of it, of like having seen and felt within myself the transmutation of emotions. I'm like, okay, so that's alchemy. Great, I can feel that in my body now. I have more access to more of my power. And there's like a whole body of wisdom that I know nothing about. And the door hasn't been open to me.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I want to hear more about your thoughts about that, because I was just listening to, I think, Manly P. Hall's on the theory and practice of alchemy this morning. So it's like, 'cause to me, like what you do is alchemy. I know, but I know there's some people that have the thoughts, or, and who's to say, is it really about making things into gold, like actual physical gold, or is it just this internal process, or both? So what are your like?
I have a feeling it's both. I have a feeling there's some sort of magical component that has actual matter to it that I don't understand. Because there were actual alchemists were like scientists at the time, and they could like put ingredients together and make something else. And so there's something about the matter part that I don't think I understand. As far as the spiritual body, the mental, the emotional body goes, there's an understanding in my space, but not yet the physical body, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Well, and I think like Israel Regardie, he maybe even put in one of his prefaces in the book, like his thoughts prior to where he was at with his knowledge. He was like, alchemy is just this internal process, nothing more. And then he met like an actual alchemist or some scientist and started to learn about the actual process of, converting things into other things. And by the end, he would say, I was wrong. Like there is actually something here physically. And I'm not sure what I think about that, and then I'm kind of reminded of just this idea of King Solomon. And King Solomon, who, built the temple, like had pretty much all the wealth we could imagine, like the richest king, the most, I want to say the most successful, but also like the most established and well-known like ruler at that time. Had like, when God came to him and was like, or the angels or whoever it was, what do you want? Like he wasn't focused on the physical material wealth. Right. He said, I want wisdom.
That's right.
And then from that wisdom came the wisdom to be able to intuit what people needed during when they came to him on his throne, and like were asking for, the best choice or options, but also like the actual, the gold and the wealth and that type of material.
That came after the wisdom.
Yes.
And I think that's the key. I think that's why these doors haven't been open to so many, is because you need to transcend through layers of initiation and growth in order to then be granted that wisdom, that door opening, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think I'm a long ways from there.
Well, I don't know. I like to think that it's like we often think that we are, and then it's like, then you get in it. It's like, oh, I've been here. Like, that it's like clicks in different ways. And okay.
Yeah.
So the alchemy is that. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That door that I would love. Like, I'm curious.
Yeah.
I'm searching, and it hasn't been revealed yet.
Yeah, I'll be curious to hear what happens after.
Yeah.
It's sad. Well, because it's Lionsgate too. There's lots of things like happening.
Exactly.
So besides, the alchemy coming in, what other sorts of offerings or projects and that have you been kind of focusing on, or have that you would like to share with people listening?
Sure. Well, I wrote a book. I published my first book last year. That's all about shadow work, called All the Light and Dark Things.
And I'll be able to link that, I believe, into the description. So just saying that to people.
Oh, great. Yeah, so that's it's a fictional story about like characters that then reveal some of the deeper teachings around, like some of the mystery teachings, some of the esoteric teachings, and definitely around shadows and how to transmute that, how to alchemize that in the body. So that was a labor of love. Yeah. That is a journey to go on to write and publish a book. And for anyone listening, I would say if you feel inspired, go on that journey. What a worthwhile experience that is to start and then complete it. Even if you don't complete it, just to start and watch it unfold.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Living Magick Occult-cast. Unfortunately, due to audio technical issues, the recording had to be cut short. If you are interested in connecting with Nathalie Jackson, I invite you to check her out at her website, www.nathaliejackson.com. She has lots of great offerings, whether or not you are in person in Edmonton or online. As a personal alumni and student in the Woman Unveiled program, I highly recommend you check out Nathalie's offerings. It has changed my life, my perspective as a woman, as a goddess or priestess, and I really feel like there's so much more that can be done around connecting through sisterhood and community. If you are interested in learning more or even having a one-on-one session with Nathalie for shadow work integration or any other of the pieces that she has shared here today, you can check out her website to find out more or connect with her on Instagram at Woman Unveiled. I'll put that information in the description below. And until next time, folks, I hope to see you again in another episode. Take care.